Rough seas indeed. Innovation. Thanks, Kuhn. Generals, admirals, representatives of allied nations, industry partners, fellow members of the Canadian Armed Forces, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is an honor to be invited to open the second day of this conference. I want to begin by passing on the regrets of General Jonathan Vance, our Chief of the Defence Staff, whose duties have prevented him from being here today, but as I said earlier today, his loss is indeed my gain. As the Deputy Minister noted yesterday, this is the first time this conference has been held in North America. And I want to thank NITEC's organizer for giving us the chance to show off our Canadian hospitality. We are deeply grateful. I also want to thank Len Bastian, our Assistant Deputy Minister of Information Management, and his Chief of Staff, Major General Greg Luce, for all they've done to make this event possible. You and your team have done great work. Bravo Zulu. This conference is tackling an issue that is of vital importance to us, both for the Canadian Armed Forces and for the Alliance as a whole. And I don't need to look any further than the title of yesterday's keynote session to see that, hopefully, we all get it. Innovation as a security imperative. I know you made it out to be a sort of leading statement, because otherwise there would be no point in having a panel, but I'll go even further and make it a declarative. Innovation is a strategic imperative. It's how we create our future. This is true for any organization. It's especially true for modern armed forces operating in a highly complex, increasingly contested global security environment. To not only operate, but prevail in that kind of space, we need to exploit every decisive advantage over potential adversaries. I want to highlight that every advantage. It will be important in a minute. In recent years, the term innovation has become synonymous with new technologies, particularly the emerging domains of space and cyber. Don't get me wrong, space and cyber technologies are extremely useful. For a country as vast and sparsely populated as Canada, they make everything we do more effective and efficient, from communications to weather to mapping to surveillance. But innovation just doesn't mean new technology. And technology does not on its own result in a strategic solution. For one, many critical advantages are the result of militaries using what they already have in a different way. Think of the evolution of combined arms tactics. Don't ask me about the evolution of combined arms tactics, being a naval officer, but just reflect on it. Adopting technology-focused approach also means we would miss out on innovations on how we train our people, how we educate our people, how we lead our people, and how we manage them at the strategic level. Either alone or in the aggregate, those opportunities could prove decisive and more cost-effective. If we're going to succeed in future operations, we need to exploit every advantage. Saying it is easy, doing it is much harder and quite a different matter. My remarks today will be focused on why innovation is so difficult for large organizations like an armed force and how we can make it easier. The first step in addressing this problem is understanding it. If innovation isn't shorthand for new technology, then what is it? What are we trying to achieve? A recent article co-authored by the Assistant Commandant of the U.S. Army Cyber School, Colonel Eric Aslakskin, used an interesting definition. It reads, innovation is not synonymous with invention. Instead, innovation is a process or a chain of activities that starts with an idea and ends with an advantage. This definition is useful for a few reasons. First, it's clear about the required input, an idea. Second, it's clear about the desired output, a military advantage. And third, it is clear about what you need to turn A into B, a process. This concept of innovation makes our need clear. We need to build a process inside our organizations that can take ideas and turn them into military advantage. And because we need to seize every decisive advantage, we need to make sure that process applies to everything we do. This is hard for any large organization because bureaucracies rely on standard, repeatable solutions to deal with common problems. Their size and structure is naturally resistant to innovation. It's even harder for an armed force for several reasons. The first is what Samuel Huntington calls the conservative realism of the military mind, one that values principles like discipline, hierarchy, obedience, and division of function. This can make encountering new ideas difficult and challenging the status quo even harder. Second, militaries place a premium on lessons of the past, everything from tactics to leadership to not fighting a land war in Russia in the winter. This is a great way to teach people how to fight during peacetime, but it's also the reason why we have a saying about generals fighting the last wars. And third, the nature of the profession of arms means that every one of us may be wounded or killed in the line of duty, which means every one of us needs to be replaceable. In each of my frigates, if each of my frigates was running a custom sonar suite, then every sonar operator and every sonar technician on every one of the ships would become a critical point of failure. That simply can't happen. So the size of our organization and the nature of our profession makes innovation difficult. But there are conditions in which militaries are not only capable of innovation, but exceptional at it. That is to say, during wartime. We can see examples of this in every conflict Canada has fought. Our country just celebrated the centennial of Vimy Ridge, our most famous military victory, and one made possible in large part due to innovations in platoon tactics, aerial reconnaissance, and the use of artillery. The Canadian Expeditionary Force was the gold standard of a learning force. Their study of lessons learned by the French at Verdun had a huge effect on the planning for Vimy. And more recently, in Afghanistan, the use of UAVs as a surveillance and reconnaissance tool is a great example of innovation. Interestingly, their use by the Canadian Armed Forces diminished rapidly since we left that theater. What is it about conflict that makes the military so much more open to innovation? There are two critical differences. The first difference is the operational imperative. We must prevail in conflict, period, full stop. On an organizational level, it's our raison d'etre, and on an individual level, it may be a matter of survival. As Dr. Andrew Hill of the U.S. Army War College puts it, in war, military personnel try new things in response to operational challenges, and the organization tolerates this experimentation because it values tactical and operational success more than it does rigid adherence to standard procedure. Outside the operational theater, that imperative isn't as clear or present, and so the natural resistance takes over again. The second difference is that, to quote an old saying, the enemy gets a vote. Good leaders want their subordinates to exercise a challenge function, to poke holes in their ideas and come up with solutions, better solutions. That challenge function is an essential part of the discussion that generates good ideas and filters out bad ones, which is just as important. But challenging your peers or your boss can be difficult in any organization with a hierarchy, let alone military hierarchy. If your people don't poke these holes or ask those questions, you miss out on opportunities and make mistakes. And if you don't catch those mistakes early, they'll be caught far too late. Because the enemy doesn't care about your office politics. The enemy doesn't care where you are on the merit list or what this will do for your bonus pay. And the enemy has no problem with challenging your basic assumptions. Assumptions like our computer networks are secure, or this is a mine-resistant vehicle, or other nations will respect international borders and conventions. Defense innovation isn't a scientific problem. It's not a technical problem. It's not a procurement problem. It's an organizational problem. So we need to tackle it at an organizational level. We need to create a process that turns ideas into advantage as a natural part of our way of business. And that process has to work both in the cubicle and in the operational theater. We need to stimulate the generation of ideas, filter and target the best ideas, test them quickly to see if they produce an advantage, and then exploit advantages across our institution. In NATO, this is called concept development and experimentation. It's a pretty simple methodology, and there are a few things we can do and are doing to ensure that we help make that possible here in Canada. First, let's talk about sharing our ideas and expertise. Our allies, many of you, are facing the same challenges we face in the modern security environment. You're feeling the same pressures, and in many cases, it makes sense to share knowledge, test ideas, and benefit from the solutions together. We've experienced great success with this approach in the space domain. Just last month, the 9th satellite in the Wideband Global SATCOM initiative was launched from Cape Canaveral. That satellite was funded by 5 partner nations, including $340 million provided by Canada. The US got a 9th satellite in their worldwide constellation, and the Canadian Armed Forces got its SATCOM needs covered for the next 20 years, at a cost far below what we would pay commercially. It was win-win, a good deal for both of us. This kind of cooperation among trusted allies just makes sense. And thanks to the combined Space Operations Partnership, we'll be sharing our good ideas and expertise for many years to come. Whether it's with the Five Eyes countries, or with NATO, or with the multinational capability development campaign, or through collaboration with industry, we have to be open to good ideas and suggestions on how we can innovate. They aren't only the tip of the spear in the sense of the people who are innovators come up with the good ideas, whether it's our officers, our NCMs, civilians, reservists. There's simply no monopoly on good ideas, and each one of them needs to be fostered in their own unique way. Capturing those ideas and turning them to advantage has to be a priority. Second, I'd like to talk about an initiative which we're calling The Journey here in Canada. It's a goal to examine every aspect of our personnel management system. It's an example of non-technological innovation that will give us an advantage in recruiting and retaining the talent we need. It will also help boost our capacity to generate ideas and innovate. One aspect of the journey will be developing a more flexible, adaptable career path. Our current path approach prioritizes full-time service and was designed for a time when people, mostly men, work the same job at the same company for their entire career. That's seldom the case anymore. We recognize that a person's aspirations and priorities are going to change over time. They may want to take a few years off to earn a degree, then come back and apply that knowledge they've gained. Or maybe they want to work for an NGO or another government department, then come back and apply their experience. Right now, we don't have the option to do that. So our people end up toughing it out, finding something else, or sadly leave, and that's not good enough. We want our people to pursue what's important to them, and will benefit as an organization from the diversity of perspective and experience. Diversity is our strength. We want our people to pursue these opportunities. The new knowledge that they will have gained will help us generate the ideas that spark innovation, which will make the Canadian Armed Forces a more desirable choice for Canadians, which will help us recruit and retain talent, which will help us promote innovation. Once we get these ideas, we need to test them and bring them through to produce a military advantage. And while senior leaders and managers may not have the monopoly on good ideas, as I've said before, we do have a major role to play in innovation. We have operational experience and expertise, institutional and corporate memory, contacts and influence, resources and personnel, and the authority to accept and tolerate risk. I can't reinforce that point enough. If we don't encourage and accept risk, then we will not be helping our subordinates accept the challenges that we're putting in front of them. And we need to be explicit and recognize the risks that we're accepting in anything that we undertake going forward. If we don't create the change ourselves, even if we aren't the primary beneficiaries of the change, we are uniquely positioned to promote and facilitate innovation by giving our people three things they desperately need: authority, direction, and support. We can encourage the challenge function. We can ask our subordinates to poke holes in our ideas, to find solutions to problems. We can encourage them to experiment, to try out new ideas, see how they work, and reward them for their effort. We must not be afraid to make a mistake, to accept risk, and in some cases fail. This is an important part of innovation. I would dare say that when we're training and we make mistakes, that's how we learn. And I can remember explaining to the Governor General of Canada and then the Chief of Defence staff that it was a great day because we were learning a lot, which probably meant we're making a number of mistakes, but that's how you learn. So innovation must be an iterative process, much like prototyping. It gets as much out of failures as it does from success. The brilliant inventor, Thomas Edison, said it best: never get discouraged if you fail. Learn from it, keep trying. This is the spirit of innovation. If we can do it in the field, we can do it in the boardroom. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope I've been able to add to the discussions you'll have as you continue this conference today. The work we're all doing in this area is critically important because innovation is an imperative for the future of our institution and our alliance. Thank you for your ideas, for your interest, and your support as we seek the capabilities we need in the future. I wish you all well over the next 2 days. Thank you for your attention.